Hey everyone, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian, and tonight we are taking a look at my top 10 rare or allocated releases of 2022. So there are a lot of channels out there, a lot of people do these wrap-ups, and I want to go ahead and preface, as you all probably understand, nothing that I or any of these other reviewers or people out there in the whiskey tubes say necessarily means you need to run out and buy these bottles. This list specifically, the way that I broke this down, I've done a picks list. I did this last year as well. And last year I did a relatively easy to find list as well. But I didn't feel like there were that many contenders I would change in regards to this year, except for maybe one of which that I am drinking tonight, which happens to be the Jack Daniel's Bonded. Jack Daniel's Bonded as well as Green River were two entries that I would put onto bottles that you all should have every day, easy to go out and find towards the top of that list. Green River specifically, because for a brand to come out with a 5-year age-dated product that has a price point to compete with the legacy brands, that's a statement. And not only that, but I thought it was a very enjoyable pour, but not one that you'll hear me talk about on this list, but I wanted to go ahead and get those out of the way. The list that I am breaking down tonight is the top rare, allocated, limited products of the year. I'm doing this list as opposed to a straight bourbon list or straight rye list. So again, go check out the picks list if you haven't already. Another disclaimer, these videos are always subjective. Everyone has their own criteria of what they're putting into a list. Those criteria might not necessarily match another reviewer's criteria. Some people only do bottles that they bought, and it's almost always limited to what that person tasted in that given year, as we're gonna see with me here tonight as well. There's several bottles I wish I had a chance to try and I didn't, and thus they're not on the list for this year. Overall, I hope that you all found bottles that you enjoyed this year, but this list is again for the type of person who wants to get a roundup of some of these really hard to find bottles and say, if there is something that I am going to try, or if there's something that I have the ability to get through a lottery, local store, or I do see it out on the shelf, or if I'm in town somewhere and I can try a pour of it, but I'm limited on what I'm gonna try, what are the things that maybe I would like to do? And my encouragement to you all, these are what I like about these sort of videos from channels, is that you get to learn what the channel reviewer or the person who hosts it likes in a given year. You learn their profile, you learn how they talk about it, and thus that will shape the things that they're gonna talk about on their channel and whether or not your palate agrees with their palate to know the things they talk about in a given year, how they're gonna relate to you and how you experience whiskey. And what I'm actually gonna do, instead of picking around a couple of honorable mentions, I'm technically gonna go down the list of 15 products, and I'll explain why I'm doing that at the end of the video. Let's go ahead and start with the product that lands at number 15 on my list, and that happens to be the Jack Daniel's Twice Barreled American Single Malt. This is a bottle that I found right towards the end of the year, and several of these bottles that you'll see, I've not opened them yet. I just got them within the last several weeks, actually, of this year. Bottles I had tried before, but just was able to get a bottle of them, and this is one that I found Christmas week. This product is one that I got a sample of, and I really liked its flavor. I like that it had traditional Jack heft and that kind of barrel char presence there, but a nice sherried finish as well. So I thought it was very sweet. You can check out the review. I'll post it up here to hear all of the rundown about it. I don't have to go into it too deep here, but this is one I really enjoyed. That is Jack Daniel's Twice Barreled American Single Malt. Moving into bottle 14 is actually one I'm not gonna have pictured, and that was the Coy Hill Small Batch. And the main reason it was here, you might see on a lot of other people's channels that it's a lot higher on the list. Now, this was a really interesting bottle to come out this year. This was incredibly high proof, as we've seen from Coy Hill from last year in the single barrel expression. We had things up and above 150 proof. And the one that I got to try, I think it's probably best described as heat and birthday cake. And it was enjoyable for sure. And the price point was nice, $55 for a 375, where it was able to be found at the Jack Daniel's gift shop or wherever else someone might have been able to find it. But to me, the palate of that was not as good as the Coy Hill single barrel release from the year before. Not what you would pay for at retail and not what people are charging for it on secondary. So while I had the single barrel rated very high, and I think the small batch is delicious as well, just because of those reasons, it was harder for me to put it higher on my list this year. So number 14, Jack Daniel's Coy Hill small batch. Moving into number 13 is another bottle that I do not have pictured. That was initially in my top 10 until a couple of late submissions bumped it out. But that was the 2022 version of the New Riff Malted Rye. Now, I liked the New Riff Malted Rye last year. I had a video of it. I'll link it above here. But when I tried it again for my friend Michael, he left me a sample. Actually, maybe he had left me the bottle. And I had looked on it and I noticed that the date was a 2022 version. I don't know if they did anything different, but the 2022 bottling of it made me go, is this even what I remembered from last year? This bottle is wonderful. It was incredibly flavorful. And to me personally, my palate, when I had a chance to try the barrel proof version of the sherry finish malted rye, I thought it was disgusting. And so just this classic, very easy to find, $60 price point for this New Riff Malted Rye. I think it's an incredible bottle. This is one that it may not actually even be rare or hard to find. So if it's not, and it's in your area, I highly suggest that you look for one of these for its price point and its drinkability. But that is number 13, the 2022 bottling of New Riff's Malted Rye. All right, continuing with the ryes, we have here the Angel's Envy Cellar Collection that was finished in the ice cider casks. This is one that's just fun. When I first got a chance to try it, it had this enjoyable rye profile to it, but with this glossy, sugary sweetness that I just thought was incredibly unique and very, very drinkable. I don't hear necessarily a ton of people talking about it, and honestly, maybe there's a lot of people that didn't really find a lot of enjoyment about it, but I found it super drinkable. It's a great pour to have when you're just sitting around with folks taking your time. When I mainly had it was in the summertime, so we're sitting outside in the patio. Great pour for that as well. Again, just nice, sugary, sweet, those dessert wine-like qualities on top of just a nice rye. Made a good balance, just an overall really fun pour. That is number 12, Angel's Envy Ice Cider Rye. All right, right before we crack into the top 10, we have number 11. Again, another one that I got, I believe, at the beginning of December. And it's another one from the 117 series, Old Forester Extra Extra Old. And when I first heard that this was going to be a product, I thought this is a little silly. And I made the joke while in the line, hearing that it was going to release. The morning of that, I saw something on our local Facebook groups and it said, this product's going to be releasing today. So I went down there and I got them. And I was making the joke, when are we going to see the extra, extra, extra old? And you know what a dad typically would say. But I liked the extra old. I have the video of that here. And I thought maybe this would bring more of the espresso, more of the char, more of the heavy notes, maybe lean more into the barrel influence. And I was quite surprised that this one actually leaned more into the fruitiness. And while there were other 117s that I liked, the Whiskey Row Fire was actually my favorite 117 series bottle leading up into trying this one. I didn't expect it, but it came with those kind of marshmallow notes towards the end and the espresso and the char notes that I really like in Brown-Forman products. But it came with a lot of fruitiness on the front end that really took me by surprise. And this quickly, even at its 93 proof, I think that it drinks very rich and very coating. And that is why this one is number 11 on my list, the 117 1910 Extra Extra Old. All right, let's get into number 10 on the list. Again, it's another one that I do not have pictured, but I know you all have seen or heard about it, and that is the Old Fitzgerald 19-year. There is not a lot of wheated products that I overly love. I mean, another one that's just a good, drinkable one, if you can find it throughout the year, would be Rebel 10. The Old Fitzgerald Decanter Series is not one that I've tried all the bottles of. It's not one that I've chased after. You do probably know from last year that the Old Fitz 8, while very kind of straightforward in its flavor and not super complex, I thought it was just a really drinkable pour. But this Old Fitzgerald 19 is one that I tried later, and the nose was full of toasted baked bread notes and soft oak. The palate had tons of sweetness to it. It entered right in the beginning sweet like grape jelly or like a grape candied sweetness. Strawberry with a big sugary oak note. I was honestly surprised. There was only one other Old Fitz decanter in the teens, and I don't remember which one. Maybe it was a 14, maybe it was a 13 year that I really liked. For the most part, it was kind of the younger ones that I enjoyed, but they're kind of few and far between. Again, not a series that I chased, but this 19-year was incredibly drinkable. Really nice oak, and definitely one that I hope at some point in time I could track down because it was so drinkable, so enjoyable. You all know that I really like kind of oaky pours, so that balanced with a nice kind of presence of the wheat profile, giving a lot of sugariness. That just was really enjoyable. So that's number 10, Old Fitzgerald 19. Moving into number 9. This one was interesting. I initially had batch A122 of the Elijah Craig barrel proof, and then I kind of did a blind throughout the balls of the year. Again, thank you to Michael for allowing me to do that. And then it kind of changed to basically any pour of Elijah Craig barrel proof. You might remember me talking last year on the channel that overall, we know most people were not a fan of the 2021 releases of Elijah Craig barrel proof, but I liked all 3 of them this year. And B522 is the one that I'm putting on the list of number 9, was actually my favorite of the 3. Now, the reason I liked it was that it had all the oakiness that I enjoy, but it was subtle, it was smooth, it was easy to drink, but it had little subtle complexities, very clean and nice, and kind of had a little candied sweetness too. C922, I can understand why a lot of people really enjoy as well, and that's why I want to mention it here. If you like the classic Elijah Craig profile, if you like a little drier, maybe more tannic finish, and you want a very robust pour, it didn't quite remind me of the old school Elijah Craig barrel proofs, but it had a big oomph to it, and it had a lot of flavor. And it was one that I feel like on a given day, I would probably prefer over the B522, but I just lean towards B522 being the more drinkable of them, and that's why I have it at number 9 here on my list. Elijah Craig barrel proof, B522. Moving into number 8, we have the William Heavenhill 15-year-old. Now, this is not the William Heavenhill 15 that we have seen years past, hazmat. Everyone goes crazy about top 5 whiskeys they've ever had, lists or anything like that. I don't know, but maybe could catch up to that. I love William Heavenhill products. I thought that the 12-year barrel strength was incredible. One of my favorite bottles that I've had. I really like the 14-year single barrels. I know some people don't. I thought the 16-year was really good, kind of a lower proof one. A little bit leaning towards over oaked, but I still really enjoyed it. The 13-year bottled in bond, I actually found incredibly drinkable and maybe not so complex, but I can crush those back. So I'm a big fan of that one. So I did not try the one from last year because they did it in the fill your own bourbon experience that I didn't get a chance to go to. But they randomly had these out at Heaven Hill towards the end of the year. It lasted all day. People camped out for it. They had it, and then they had it more. And when everyone left, they still had more. And all day long, they had William Heavenhill available at the gift shop. And so after work, I had a chance to go down there right before they closed. And guess what? I was able to pick one of these up. What I like about the William Heavenhill is that it has the classic profile that you want to get from Heaven Hill, but at an older age. It has nice fruitiness from the beginning, and then that brown sugar kind of caramel sweetness that you come to know. And it's got a subtle complexity to it. It's not that heavy. It's 109 proof, but it drinks really well. It drinks old and oaky, not quite musty and tobacco-y, but it has nice brown sugar caramels with a big fruity front. And again, as a fan of William Heavenhill line, it's one that I was excited to bring into the collection. That is number 8, William Heavenhill 15-year. Moving into number 7, continues from Heaven Hill. And honestly, I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to try this, nor if I was going to find this. But honestly, days before Christmas, the Liquor Barn near me released this, as well as Old Fitz 19, some Willets, a whole bunch of stuff. And I was able to get there and get one of these bottles. And then when I finally tried it, man, I am not surprised. This is making a lot of people's top of list. This product is so thick. It is thick. So much so that honestly, I can understand why it would come off very hot for a lot of people. But when I put a couple of drops of water in there, normally when I do that, it can kind of take an older pour like this. This is a mix of 13 and 15-year products, and it kind of makes them fall apart. This one though, it opens it up, and man, it is no less gripping, no less full on the profile. It smells like chocolate covered raisins and vermouth. The pour coats everywhere in the mouth. If you want something that has kind of the older, oakier profile, like the William Heavenhill 15-year or the Elijah Craig 18, anything like, if you like the older oakier tobacco pours, you're not really going to find this here. Honestly, it does have a sugary kind of start to this, a fruity kind of cherry, like a maraschino cherry juice start to this. Now, I could see why people might assume that this is a Buffalo Trace if they were blind to this. It has kind of that kind of fruitier, sugary profile as well to start before it gets to the finish. I just thought that it lacked a little bit of complexity. And while I like mouthfeel and think that that can, in some cases, win over in a pour, this one is coating and thick for days. But it was missing some of the complexity that I really like in a pour. Maybe as I get to drink this down, I'll find that again and it would go higher on my list. But for right now, we'll leave it here at number 7, Parker's Heritage Double Barreled Blend. Moving into number 6, we have the Heritage Collection from Heaven Hill with their 17-year-old bourbon. Now, again, this is another one that I know is at the top of a lot of people's lists. And I will go ahead and preface this. You can obviously tell there are a lot of Heaven Hill products in this year. This was an excellent year for Heaven Hill, but I will tell you, most of these pours need a little bit of airtime before you dive into them, and this Heaven Hill 17-year is no exception. However, once it has that, I think that it has the complexity that you're looking for. I think it has some enjoyable proof there as well, but it has a sugary sweetness to the front, not expected in a 17-year product that goes from 17, 19, 20 years in there as well, especially coming after the 27-year. I was worried with the 27-year that it would give me a very oaky, tannic presence here, and it doesn't. It gives you a lot of nice pillowy, candied sweetness at the front, but it still brings back some of the musty rickhouse tobacco-like notes that I think add a complexity, the profile that just round it out a little bit more, which make it obviously higher than the other Elijah Craig products that you've seen on this list so far. That is number 6, the Heaven Hill Heritage Collection 17-year-old barrel proof. I think this is going to shock a lot of people, but we have this year's King of Kentucky. Now, don't get me wrong. I love King of Kentucky, and I love it this year as well. From the barrels I've tried, I've not tried as many barrels this year as I have in years past, but I was a little concerned that we'd go down in quality, especially because most of the reviewers who got the early media samples seemed to get a barrel that was very hot, had a lot of heat, and not a lot of flavor. And I've tried barrels of King of Kentucky that have had that before, so I was nervous that that would be my experience as well. Not at all. Actually, the barrel that I like the most seems to be one that was what I call Brown-Forman's take on Wild Turkey. It had a lot of the characteristics that I like flavor-wise that are in Wild Turkey products, but still had the classic Brown-Forman King of Kentucky profile. So while I probably would still say that 2019 is my favorite, and then followed up by the 2021 pours, I really like the 2022 as well. I thought that they kind of hung right neck and neck with the 2021 barrels that I was able to try as well. So incredibly enjoyable pour. You know me, it's a great pour. There's just a couple of things that I like a little bit more than it this year. That is number 5, this year's King of Kentucky. Moving into number 4, another bottle that you all have seen me talk about on the channel already this year. It is the Four Roses 16.5 year OESV Kentucky Strong that they did, where the proceeds went to the Eastern Kentucky flood relief. This bottle is not only an incredible example of what Four Roses can do, it is a beautiful, well-aged product. And I think that this, especially for the cost, knowing that you're doing some donation there as well, I think that this was the start of what we saw last year with the 20-year, and then continued on seeing with around the Christmas time, they did an 18.5 year OESK, and I'm not actually surprised is in this year as well. But the bottle that I tried, I haven't tried very many so far, and the bottle of that 18 year that I tried was very sweet, missing some of the complexities I found in this. But for a Four Roses fan, and in order to do some good, plus just the memories of camping out for this bottle specifically when we heard that it was going to release, I was a very big fan of. You know that I like oak. Mix that with a very nice OESV profile. That gets us to number 4. Four Roses Kentucky Strong OESV 16.5 year. Moving into number 3 was another miraculous bottle that I was able to find at retail here in town, honestly, on New Year's Day. And that happens to be this year's George T. Stagg. You obviously saw that I did a video review on this one as well. And this is one of my favorite stags that we've had in the last couple of years. I thought that it had all that brown sugar sweetness that you like about stag, mixed with kind of an earthier funkiness that reminded me of some of the older bottles of stag that I had. At 138.7 proof, it is high in proof, but it does not drink it at all. It's dangerously easy to drink. So it brings back to all the flavors that I really enjoy about stag. I really liked the 2020 George T. Stag, but when I revisit the profile, I actually found it a little hotter than what I typically expect. But it is back this year. It is complex, it is deep, it is everything that I want in a barrel strength Buffalo Trace product, let alone a barrel strength product at all in that age. That is this year's George T. Stag. Now, I thought the George T. Stag honestly was going to be my number 2 or my number 1 pour, but there was one that was just crazy this year, especially comparing them when I was tasting through them to put things in place. And that happens to be number 2, 4-Gate 14-year Hazmat bourbon. So this is a straight bourbon. It came in at 144.3 proof. It is distilled in Indiana, and this thing is crazy. It is crazy awesome. You can tell this has had some work put on it. When comparing this bottle to George T. Stag, it makes it seem like this is E.H. Taylor. It is so robust, so heavy, so flavorful, but it still keeps the same cola, brown sugar, fruity profile like a George T. Stag. To me, it's like George T. Stag on steroids. And it just ramps up the flavor to an insane level, sort of like the Parker's does for Heaven Hill flavors, but it keeps the complexity, it keeps the candied oak and brown sugar profile, and it's just, amazing. I don't think there were very many bottles, maybe 60 of these that were released, and so very hard one to come by, but that is number 2 on my list. 4-Gate 14-year Hazmat bourbon. Which brings us to number 1 on my list, Wild Turkey 12-year export that we got in. Now, again, this bottle here, we were able to get this in Kentucky because we had a store that was bringing some of these in. This was an export product. I've done a review on it here. But this bottle is incredible. I think its retail is somewhere around $100, and the resell that we had here at the store locally in Louisville was $150 when I picked it up. Now I know $150 is a lot for a lot of people. As I'm seeing stores with their Russell's picks going up to almost $100, you see the single rick house was $200 and something. You see the Master's Keep going up in the $200 something. I think that this is very affordable. And this is a product that back when I first reviewed it, I said to myself, this could be a regular drinker for me. This is affordable enough that I could find myself drinking a whole lot of this, but putting it up against Stag, putting it up against the Rare Character Amburana, putting this up against the Parkers, the Elijah Craig Barrel Proofs, putting this up against stuff, I kept finding myself drawn back to this profile, this balance, this proof, everything about this I thought was really well done. And that's one thing I thought was interesting about my pours this year. It wasn't necessarily that they got richer and thicker and heavier the more they do. They kind of just weaved in and out. And so it really was a complete package when it came to all of these pours that really put them in the place that they are. And that is my number 1 of the year, Wild Turkey 12-101. That is my list for this year. I know it was a long video, so I thank you for sticking with me through this time. Let me know your thoughts on any of these pours if you've had them down below, and let me know what your favorite products have been. Let me know what your favorite rare or allocated bottles have been this year. Again, with the 4 Roses, you noticed I put a single barrel in here instead of the LE, and I think it's true. I think this year, second year in a row, there are just single barrel bottles that they've put out that are better than their limited edition. Me personally, I'd love to hear what you all have to say. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Let me know if you're enjoying the content, and I look forward to bringing more to you all here in the near future. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in to another year of really good bourbon. Until next time, we'll see you all later.